night was alive with secrets, and under a sky splattered with stardust, destiny began its slow, inexorable march. In the shadow of an ancient forest where legends whispered with every rustling leaf, a forbidden promise echoed, a promise that would shatter worlds and tear hearts apart. This is the tale of Cassandra, known to her kin as Cass, a young woman whose fate was forged in both fire and moonlight, destined to navigate the treacherous realm of werewolf shifters and supernatural curses. From the very first heartbeat of this story, you will sense that nothing here is ordinary. The air crackles with a strange energy, a blend of magic and malediction that has long haunted the dark corners of the world. It is a realm where the veil between the natural and the otherworldly is paper thin, and the unspoken rules of nature are bent by ancient curses and desperate wishes. Here, in the haunting twilight of accursed destiny, every whisper of wind seems to murmur secrets of past transgressions and future heartaches. Cassandra's story begins in a time when hope was as fragile as the silver threads of moonlight weaving through the towering pines. Born into a world where power was inherited and loyalty was demanded by fate, Cass was no ordinary girl. Even as a child, her eyes shone with an intensity that hinted at a deeper hidden truth. For years, she had been drawn to a peculiar figure, a reclusive magician whose darkened shop stood at the edge of the village, a place locals dared not look upon too closely. It was there that she had, time and again, sought the impossible, the granting of wishes that defied the natural order. In those hallowed, half-lit moments inside the cramped space of that enigmatic shop, Cass learned that every wish demanded its price. The magician, with his piercing gaze and solemn tone, had warned her of the perilous path that lay ahead. Yet, like all who dare to dream against the tide of destiny, she pressed on, her heart a battleground of hope and trepidation. With each visit, the seed of longing grew stronger, as did the burden of the curse she was fated to bear. A curse that would intertwine her destiny with a dark and potent force, binding her to a supernatural realm she could neither fully understand nor escape. As the wheel of fate turned, Cass's life was irrevocably altered by a single, shattering moment, the day she made her wish. In a desperate bid to reclaim what she believed was lost, her future, her power, her place among those she once loved, she bargained with forces beyond mortal comprehension. But wishes, as Cass would soon learn, come with consequences far graver than she could imagine. The price was not merely a sacrifice, it was a transformation that would challenge the very core of her existence. In that fateful act, the ancient curse was awakened, a curse that would see her forever torn between the light of human hope and the dark, relentless pull of the beast within. The world around Cass seemed to shift that night, as if time itself had stuttered. The familiar landscape of her youth was now overlaid with an eerie luminescence, a spectral glow that hinted at the dual nature of her destiny. She would become a bridge between two disparate worlds, the mortal realm and that of the supernatural. The once comforting rhythm of everyday life was replaced by the erratic pulse of impending doom and seductive danger. Every shadow became a potential threat. Every rustle in the underbrush, a harbinger of the wild power that now stirred within her veins. It wasn't long before the consequences of her wish began to manifest. Whispers of her fate spread like wildfire among her kin, and the supernatural community watched with bated breath as Cass's transformation unfolded. With each passing day, she found herself wrestling with an inner turmoil, a battle between the remnants of her human heart and the primal instincts that surged forth from her new cursed nature. This internal struggle was mirrored in the world around her. The packs of werewolf shifters, long divided by ancient rivalries, sensed a disturbance in the natural order. Among them, a particular figure loomed large, a charismatic, formidable presence named Sebastian. His fate was inextricably linked with Cass's, an intertwining of destinies that promised both heartache and profound, unyielding passion. Sebastian, with his stormy eyes and untamed spirit, was both a mirror and a foil to Cass. While she was haunted by the heavy cost of her wish, he embodied the raw, unbridled power of the supernatural. Their encounters, charged with tension and electric inevitability, became the crucible in which their destinies were forged. Each clash of wills, every whispered accusation under the watchful gaze of the full moon, carried the weight of centuries of conflict and longing. For Cass, Sebastian was not merely an adversary. He was a living testament to the duality of her existence, the reminder that every gift of destiny was also a curse. In the midst of this relentless, ever-escalating drama, Cass found herself standing at the crossroads of her life. The curse that bound her, the wish that had promised redemption, and the relentless pull of fate all converged into a single, poignant truth. In this world of supernatural intrigue and eternal struggle, destiny was not a matter of choice, but a relentless force that carved its path through every heart. And so, with the weight of that realization pressing down on her, Cassandra took her first tentative steps into a future where love and betrayal, power and sacrifice danced together in a timeless, tragic waltz. This is not just a story of a girl who dared to dream. It is the story of a soul marked by destiny, forever scarred by a wish, and forever entwined with the wild, untamed forces of nature. As the night deepens and the first light of dawn begins to break over the ancient forest, Cass's journey is only just beginning. The promise of both salvation and damnation lies ahead, wrapped in the mystery of a world where every whisper of wind and every shadow conceals a secret. Welcome to a tale where destiny is a double-edged sword, and every heartbeat resounds with the echoes of ancient curses and undying love. With every breath, Cass steps deeper into a realm where her fate, and the fate of all she holds dear, will be written in the blood of legends, under the watchful eyes of both man and beast. The adventure begins now, and its echoes will be felt across the realms of the living and the supernatural alike. From her earliest memories, Cass's world was a tapestry woven with both wonder and a persistent undercurrent of foreboding. As a child, she often found solace in the quiet moments after dusk, when the sky melted into a deep indigo and the forest outside her modest home whispered secrets of realms unseen. It was during these twilight hours that her imagination soared beyond the confines of everyday life. A life that, for reasons she could not yet understand, had always felt destined for something greater. Even before she could fully grasp the concept of fate, young Cassandra was drawn to the enigmatic figure known simply as the Magician. His little shop, tucked away on a narrow street and shrouded in mystery, was a place that both terrified and fascinated her. Rumors in the village painted him as a keeper of ancient, dangerous secrets, one who could grant wishes but never without an ominous cost. Despite the hushed warnings and the fearful glances of passers-by, Cass's curiosity burned brighter than any cautionary tale. I remember the first time she set foot inside that dimly lit shop. The air was thick with the scent of old parchment, and something unidentifiably otherworldly, like the distant echo of forgotten magic. Flickering candlelight danced along the walls, casting eerie shadows that seemed to breathe with life. For a moment, the boundaries between the natural and the supernatural blurred, leaving Cass suspended in a state of reverence and trepidation. There, behind a counter cluttered with mysterious artifacts and faded manuscripts, sat the Magician, a gaunt man with eyes that gleamed with both wisdom and melancholy. "Child," he had said, his voice soft yet heavy with unspoken histories, "you seek to alter the course of your destiny, but every wish carries a price. Are you willing to pay it?" Even then, with the innocence of youth clouding her understanding, Cass felt that her soul was already tethered to something beyond mortal comprehension. Her heart pounded with a mixture of fear and exhilaration as she nodded, unable to articulate the depths of her yearning to escape the ordinary and grasp the extraordinary. In that moment, a silent pact was forged, a promise to herself to chase the flicker of hope that glimmered at the edge of her dreams, no matter how perilous the path might be. Over the years, Cass returned to that mysterious shop time and again. Each visit deepened her understanding of the delicate interplay between desire and consequence. The magician, though always solemn in his warnings, seemed to see in her a spirit, too fierce to be confined by mundane limits. He would regale her with tales of those who had dared to meddle with fate, of destinies rewritten in the language of sacrifice and magic. These stories, though laced with sorrow, lit a spark in her heart, an unwavering conviction that she, too, was meant for something greater. It was during one of these secretive meetings that the first hints of her fateful connection with Sebastian began to emerge. In the flickering glow of the candlelit room, as the magician carefully unfurled a weathered scroll, Cass's eyes caught a glimpse of a drawing, a portrait of a young man with stormy eyes and a wild mane of hair. Though she couldn't yet name him, there was an inexplicable pull, as if this mysterious figure was already woven into the fabric of her destiny. The magician's gaze met hers, and for a brief, unspoken moment, it was as if he was telling her that the figure in the portrait would one day play a pivotal role in her life, a role that would forever alter the course of her existence. As Cass grew older, the boundaries between her cherished dreams and harsh reality began to blur. The once innocent fascination with the supernatural matured into a burning determination to challenge the fates. The lessons learned within the magician's shadow became her guiding light in a world that was increasingly fraught with secrets and hidden dangers. Every whispered warning and every cryptic prophecy resonated with the growing understanding that the magic she sought was not simply a tool for escape, but a double-edged sword capable of both healing and destruction. Her relationship with the supernatural world, though still shrouded in mystery, became a defining aspect of her identity. The allure of power, coupled with the weight of inevitable consequence, drove her to experiment with small wishes, each one a test of her resolve. With every incantation and every careful exchange of words with the magician, Cass inched closer to the cusp of her destiny, all the while feeling an invisible thread pulling her toward that enigmatic portrait, a thread that would soon draw her into a whirlwind of passion, rivalry, and danger. The presence of Sebastian loomed like a storm on the horizon, a tempest of emotions and unspoken challenges. Even in her early years, the mere thought of him stirred a potent mix of admiration and apprehension. Though Cass had never met him face to face as a child, she sensed his existence in the murmurs of the wind, in the shadows that danced at the edge of her dreams. It was as if fate had chosen to intertwine their lives long before they were old enough to understand the implications. Sebastian, with his magnetic presence and untamed spirit, represented everything wild and irresistible about the supernatural world, a world that promised both salvation and damnation in equal measure. The early whispers of their destined encounter were like fragments of a long-forgotten song, haunting and beautiful. Cass would often lie awake at night, her young mind filled with vivid visions of a future where her path crossed with a man who was as much a part of the wild as the moonlit forests themselves. Those dreams were laced with both hope and a foreboding certainty that every choice, every wish made in the quiet hours of the night, would lead her inexorably toward a fateful meeting, a meeting that would ignite a passion as fierce and unpredictable as the very magic that coursed through her veins. In the tender years of her childhood, Cass learned that magic was not merely an escape, but a force that could reshape destiny. The magician's shop became her sanctuary, a place where the boundaries of time and space dissolved into endless possibility. Each encounter, each whispered incantation, was a step further into a realm where the extraordinary was commonplace, and the line between blessing and curse was perilously thin. Thus, the foundation of Cass's life was laid, a life defined by a relentless quest for transformation and a desire to defy the ordinary. It was a journey that began with the innocent hope of a child, blossoming into a destiny steeped in magic, danger, and the undeniable pull of fate. And in the midst of it all, The promise of Sebastian's looming presence served as both a beacon and a warning, heralding the collision of two worlds that would soon forever alter the course of her life. The early days of Cass's life were not spent in quiet reflection or gentle lessons of fate. They were a whirlwind of daring challenges and wild games that set the stage for a rivalry as fierce as it was unexpected. Every afternoon, when the last echoes of schoolyard laughter faded into the embrace of the dense forest, Cass and her friends would converge with the energy of a storm. In those unrestrained hours, the natural world transformed into an arena for contests that were as playful as they were brutal. It was here, amid the towering pines and trickling brooks, that Cass discovered her indomitable spirit. One of the most memorable games of her childhood was the annual Moonlight Dash, a race through the twisting forest trails that wove together the boundaries of their small packs. On these nights, the forest itself seemed to pulse with anticipation, its ancient trees silently witnessing every desperate sprint and every laughter-filled taunt. Cass, with her nimble strides and fearless heart, was a natural. Her determination was palpable. Each time she dashed forward, it was as if she were running not just against her peers, but against the very constraints of destiny. It was during one such race that she first encountered Sebastian, although at the time he was just another competitor in the fray. Sebastian, with his unruly mop of brown hair and a perpetual smirk playing on his lips, possessed an effortless air of mischief. In the midst of the forest, as branches whipped past and leaves danced in the moonlight, the two of them became locked in a silent contest of wills. Every step was charged with unspoken challenge. While Cass's eyes burned with resolve, Sebastian's glinted with a mixture of playful arrogance and calculated ease. Their footsteps on the soft forest floor echoed like a heartbeat, each one marking the beginning of a rivalry that would only grow more complicated with time. That day, the race was not just about speed. It was a test of resourcefulness and strategy. Cass, always one to push boundaries, had devised clever shortcuts through thick undergrowth and even swung from low-hanging branches to save precious seconds. Sebastian, ever the wily trickster, countered with his own brand of mischievous ingenuity. When Cass leaped over a fallen log with the agility of a wildcat, Sebastian found a way to use that very log as a springboard, launching himself ahead with a burst of energy that left everyone gasping. The competition was fierce, yet laced with humor. Each misstep or cheeky retort sparked bursts of laughter among their pack, even as the stakes of pride and honor hung heavy in the air. In one particularly unforgettable race, as the packs converged, near the edge of a mist-shrouded clearing, the rules seemed to blur. It wasn't a contest of mere physical prowess. It was a battle of wit. Cass, determined not to be outdone, employed every trick she knew. At one point, she intentionally feigned exhaustion, causing Sebastian to lower his guard. Just as he began to celebrate what he thought was a sure victory, Cass burst forward with a renewed burst of speed, her competitive spirit reignited by the thrill of the chase. The sight of her dashing past him, cheeks flushed with determination and eyes alight with defiant joy, made Sebastian's smirk twist into a look of genuine surprise, a moment that would later be remembered as a turning point in their rivalry. Their contests were never purely physical. They were imbued with the art of banter. Between sprints and daring leaps, the two exchanged barbs that were as sharp as the thorns lining the forest floor. "You're as slow as molasses, Cass," Sebastian would jeer, his voice carrying effortlessly through the trees. And Cass, never one to be outdone, would retort with equal fervor, "Maybe if you stopped goofing off, you'd actually be a challenge." Their words, wrapped in playful sarcasm, revealed the first fragile layers of a connection that went far deeper than mere competition. Beneath the surface of their rivalry lay a mutual respect, an unspoken acknowledgement of each other's strength, and a budding recognition that their fates were intricately intertwined. Of course, these early contests were not without their share of mishaps. There were moments when the games escalated into chaos, a slipped foot here, a miscalculated jump there, and the laughter turned to exasperated shouts and light-hearted scolding. In one memorable incident, Cass, determined to reclaim her lead, attempted a particularly audacious shortcut that led her directly into a thicket of brambles. As she emerged, disheveled and pricked by thorns, Sebastian couldn't help but burst into laughter. "Looks like nature won this round," he teased, extending a hand to help her up. Although she glared in mock indignation, Cass couldn't suppress a small smile, an acknowledgement that even in defeat, there was a spark of camaraderie amidst the rivalry. Through these spirited competitions, the bonds between the young shifters were forged in the heat of adventure and the cool shadow of ancient trees. For Cass, every race, every prank, and every near fall was a lesson in resilience. Each challenge pushed her further, honing not just her physical abilities but also her mental fortitude. In the playful echoes of the forest, she learned that victory was as much about cleverness and adaptability as it was about speed. And as much as she reveled in her own triumphs, there was an undeniable thrill in the constant dance with Sebastian, a dance that was equal parts rivalry and unspoken destiny. Even now, when the memory of those early days flutters at the edge of her consciousness like a half-remembered dream, Cass can't help but smile at the raw intensity of it all. Those childhood races were more than mere games. They were the crucible in which her fierce, determined spirit was forged. In the competitive heat of the forest, every laugh, every scornful remark, and every moment of shared vulnerability laid the groundwork for a relationship that was destined to evolve into something far more complex than either of them could have imagined. As the sun set on those halcyon days, leaving behind long shadows and the lingering scent of pine and possibility, Cass understood one undeniable truth. In the wild, unpredictable game of life, the thrill of the chase was matched only by the sting of rivalry. And with Sebastian by her side, sometimes as a rival, sometimes as a mirror reflecting the best and worst of her very soul, the stage was set for a destiny that would forever blur the lines between love and competition, between magic and fate, in a world where every race was a step closer to the truth of who she was meant to be. As the seasons turned, and the once innocent days of childhood faded into the charged glow of adolescence, Cass and Sebastian's relationship evolved into a turbulent tapestry of rivalry and unexpected passion. No longer were their encounters limited to playful races through the forest. Each meeting now pulsed with a raw intensity that left them both breathless and questioning their own hearts. It was during one particularly stormy evening, when rain hammered against the ancient pines and the world outside seemed to dissolve into darkness, that a confrontation between them reached its boiling point. The tension had been simmering for weeks, fueled by countless instances of biting sarcasm and unspoken grudges that had accumulated over years of competing, teasing, and outmaneuvering each other. That night, the charged energy in the air was almost tangible as Cass stormed into the clearing where Sebastian was waiting, his presence as magnetic as ever. Their eyes locked in a silent duel, a battle of wills that would soon erupt into a cacophony of words and blows. "Do you always have to act like the world revolves around you, Sebastian?" Cass snapped, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and longing. The rain masked her tears, yet every word dripped with the fierce determination of a warrior, unafraid to fight for what she believed in. Her fists clenched at her sides, and for a heartbeat, it seemed as though the forest itself held its breath, awaiting the inevitable clash. Sebastian's dark eyes flashed with equal measures of irritation and something more elusive, a vulnerability he would never openly admit. "And do you always have to treat every challenge as a personal affront, Cass?" he retorted, his tone laced with derision and a hint of sorrow. His words, though sharp, carried the weight of an unspoken history, a shared past that neither could easily escape. Their verbal sparring was like a dance, a tightly choreographed exchange of jabs and parries, where every insult was countered by a defiant smile, and every bitter remark concealed a flicker of admiration. They circled one another in that rain-soaked clearing, each step echoing with memories of earlier days when their contests were games, and the stakes were as light as a summer breeze. Now, however, the air was thick with unresolved emotions and an undercurrent of something dangerously close to desire. The confrontation quickly escalated. Cass lunged forward, her agility honed by years of dodging both physical and emotional blows. Sebastian met her with equal force, and before long, their struggle transformed into a blur of motion, a rapid exchange of strikes and counterstrikes that resonated with the echoes of their shared history. In the midst of the clash, every punch that Cass threw was infused with years of pent-up frustration. The sting of being perpetually underestimated, the burning need to prove herself not only as a rival, but as someone worthy of being seen. Sebastian's responses were equally fierce, a testament to his own inner conflict. With every calculated move, he revealed that beneath his cocky facade lay a storm of conflicting emotions. As their bodies collided, the forest around them seemed to come alive, the wind carrying their ragged breaths, and the patter of rain synchronizing with the rapid beat of their hearts. Between flurries of physical blows, their voices broke through the tumult. "You always think you're the best, don't you?" Cass shouted, dodging a particularly vicious swipe from Sebastian. "I'm tired of it. Tired of you making every little victory about yourself." Her words, punctuated by the slap of rain against her skin, rang out with an honesty that was both liberating and painful. In that moment, the battlefield became a mirror of her inner turmoil, a raging tempest of competitive fire and forbidden tender passion. For a split second, their eyes met, not as adversaries, but as two souls laid bare, each scarred by their own ambitions and haunted by the specter of fate. In that suspended moment, Cass felt a jolt of something profound, an unspoken recognition of the duality that defined them both. She was furious with him, yet undeniably drawn to him. Every insult hurled, every challenge accepted, only deepened the intricate bond that tethered them together. Maybe if you'd stop flaunting that arrogant smile, you'd understand what it's like to fight for more than just empty pride, Cass hissed, her voice breaking with a mix of anger and a desperate plea for validation. The raw, unfiltered emotion in her tone exposed the vulnerable core that she guarded so fiercely. It was a battle not only for supremacy, but for the chance to be seen, for Sebastian to see the true depths of her struggle. Sebastian's eyes softened momentarily, his usual sneer replaced by a brief flash of regret. "I'm not trying to belittle you, Cass," he murmured, almost too softly for her to catch over the roar of the storm. "But you have to understand, this isn't just about winning. It's about proving something to yourself, too." His voice was a mixture of challenge and confession, a reflection of the complex interplay between pride and insecurity that defined him. Their skirmish eventually reached a standstill, as if both were forced to confront the deeper meaning behind their relentless duels. The rain washed away the blood and sweat from their wounds, leaving behind only the lingering taste of bitterness and unspoken desire. In the cool aftermath of the clash, as they both stood chest-heaving and eyes locked, the forest fell into a heavy silence, a silence that spoke volumes about the uncharted territory of their hearts. Cass's internal struggle was as palpable as the droplets cascading down her face. The relentless rivalry, the constant need to outdo Sebastian, had become intertwined with an undeniable longing, a yearning for connection that defied the logic of their ceaseless competitions. Every battle was a contradiction, a fight meant to assert dominance that simultaneously revealed the vulnerability of two souls desperately searching for something more profound than victory. In that rain-drenched clearing, amidst the echo of key, their strained laughter and lingering glances, Cass and Sebastian began to realize that their fierce rivalry was not simply about proving who was stronger. It was a crucible in which their deepest fears and hidden desires were exposed. The spark that had ignited in childhood contests now threatened to become a raging inferno, one that could either consume them both or forge an unbreakable bond from the ashes of their conflict. As the storm subsided and the first tentative rays of dawn pierced the gloom, both Cass and Sebastian knew that nothing would ever be the same. The confrontation had stripped away layers of pretense, leaving them with the raw, unadulterated truth of their connection. In that moment of fragile clarity, they understood that their shared journey was about more than rivalry. It was about coming to terms with the forces that drove them. Forces that were as much a part of their nature as the moonlit forests and the ancient curses that whispered through the night. With hearts still pounding from the clash, and minds swirling with a blend of anger, passion, and confusion, they reluctantly separated. Yet, even as they walked away from the clearing, the embers of their confrontation burned brightly, promising that their paths were forever intertwined. Their parting was laced with the promise of future encounters, a promise that each clash would peel back another layer of the complex, ever-evolving relationship that lay between them. And so, the stage was set for the next act in their tumultuous saga, a saga where every argument, every clash, would not only test their strength, but also illuminate the delicate dance of love and enmity that defined their intertwined destinies. Under, a sky bruised with the colors of an impending storm. The air crackled with a tension that went far beyond the mere clash of bodies. It was as if the entire forest held its breath, anticipating a confrontation that would change everything between Cass and Sebastian. Tonight, their rivalry had evolved into something deeper, an intricate dance of emotion, pain, and desire. The setting was a vast, shadowy clearing within the heart of the woods, where the ancient trees stood like silent witnesses to destinies about to be rewritten. The event that fateful night was no ordinary hunt. It was an annual trial, a grueling competition where young shifters tested their strength, wits, and courage in a dangerous game against the elements and each other. For Cass and Sebastian, it had always been a stage for playful rivalry. But tonight, as the rules blurred and the stakes soared, every heartbeat pulsed with raw intensity. The challenge was set, a hunt for a legendary, elusive beast known to lurk within the deepest recesses of the forest, a creature said to embody both the savage beauty and the peril of the supernatural world. Cass's heart pounded as she stood, at the edge of the clearing, every nerve alight with anticipation. The familiar rush of adrenaline mingled with a profound internal conflict. The searing pain of past betrayals, the simmering resentment that had long simmered beneath the surface, and, unexpectedly, the inescapable pull of a passion she had tried to deny. Her eyes, wide with determination and uncertainty, scanned the darkened woods. Every shadow, every rustle of leaves seemed to echo with the unspoken history shared with Sebastian. Sebastian emerged from the gloom like a wraith of the night, tall, his silhouette defined by the eerie light of flickering torches set by the elders to mark the course. His presence stirred the air, and for a moment, time seemed to slow. He moved with a predatory grace that had always both infuriated and fascinated Cass. In that charged moment, the competition transformed from a test of physical might to a crucible for their tangled emotions. The hunt began with a silence that was as heavy as the storm clouds overhead. With a nod from the pack leader, the competitors surged forward. Cass darted into the forest with a burst of speed, her instincts honed by years of training and countless skirmishes with Sebastian. She felt every muscle in her body strain as she navigated the labyrinth of trees and underbrush. Yet, amid the urgency, her mind was flooded with memories of every argument, every heated exchange that had built up between her and Sebastian over the years. The internal conflict, the pain of betrayal, the sting of rivalry, and the flickering embers of a forbidden desire merged into a single, overwhelming force that both propelled and tormented her. Deep within the forest, in a clearing lit only by the ghostly light of the moon, Cass encountered the beast, a massive, spectral creature with eyes that glowed like coals in the night. Its presence was awe-inspiring and terrifying, a living embodiment of the wild, untamed magic of the land. As Cass squared off against this formidable opponent, she could feel the weight of every expectation, every whispered curse of fate. In that heartbeat of confrontation, every lesson learned from the magician, every childhood race, every bitter clash with Sebastian surged to the forefront of her mind. With a roar that seemed to shake the very foundations of the forest, Cass lunged at the beast. The battle that ensued was a blur of ferocity and instinct. Claws slashed through the air, and the beast's unearthly howl mingled with the pounding of her heart. Every strike was a cathartic release, a defiance of the curse that had haunted her since her fateful wish. In the midst of this savage dance, her thoughts inevitably drifted to Sebastian. His face, often so smug in victory and so haunted in defeat, flickered through her mind like a series of unfinished verses in an epic poem. Then, as if summoned by the tempest of her emotions, Sebastian appeared at the edge of the fray. His arrival was sudden and commanding, a dark figure cutting through the chaos with calculated precision. Without a word, he joined the battle, his movements both graceful and merciless. For a moment, the conflict shifted from beast versus shifter to a dual struggle that transcended the physical. Cass felt an electric jolt every time their eyes met in the midst of combat, a collision of souls that was as painful as it was irresistible. Their combined assault on the beast was a study in perfect, unintentional harmony. When Sebastian's powerful strike created an opening, Cass capitalized on it with a move that was as instinctive as it was daring. The beast, caught between their relentless attacks, let out a final, anguished cry before collapsing in a heap of shadows and silence. Victory was theirs, but the triumph was tainted by a profound, bittersweet awareness. In that fierce, adrenaline-fueled moment, the walls Cass had built around her heart crumbled, and she was left exposed to a torrent of conflicting emotions. As the echoes of the battle faded into the night, Cass stood panting, her body trembling with exhaustion and a flood of inner turmoil. The adrenaline slowly ebbed away, replaced by a deep, aching vulnerability. She felt the raw sting of resentment for all the time Sebastian had taunted her, mixed with an undeniable, almost desperate yearning for the connection that their battles had always hinted at. It was as if the very act of fighting had peeled away the layers of rivalry, revealing a truth that was both exhilarating and devastating. They were inextricably linked, bound by fate, competition, and an undercurrent of passion that neither could fully control. Sebastian approached, his eyes dark with intensity and an emotion that went beyond simple triumph. "You fought well tonight, Cass," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the quiet rustling of the trees. There was an edge of something unspoken in his tone, a mixture of admiration and regret, as if he too had been forced to confront the fragile boundaries of his own heart. His words, though soft, carried the weight of a promise and a challenge all at once. Cass's gaze hardened for a moment as she fought back tears that threatened to spill over. "We both did," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm raging within her. "But tonight, I felt something more. It wasn't just about winning, Sebastian. It was about facing the part of me I've been too afraid to acknowledge." Her confession hung in the air, heavy with the implications of vulnerability and the risk of exposing a truth that had long been buried beneath layers of defiance. For a heartbeat, time itself seemed to pause. The world around them, the darkened forest, the lingering scent of rain, the silence following the battle, became a stage for a silent, powerful exchange of unspoken confessions. Then, as the first hints of dawn began to brush the horizon with pale light, Sebastian stepped closer. His face was a mask of conflicted emotions, and in that moment, every scar of their rivalry, every bitter word and every fierce strike, coalesced into a single shattering truth. "Maybe we've been fighting for more than just pride all these years," he said, his voice trembling with an honesty that left Cass momentarily speechless. "Maybe deep down we were fighting to find something real, something that could mend all this brokenness." The cliffhanger of that revelation hung in the crisp morning air. Both knew that nothing would ever be the same after this night. Night where pain, anger, and passion collided in a way that threatened to shatter their carefully constructed worlds. In that charged moment, as the forest awoke around them, Cass and Sebastian stood on the precipice of a new reality. A reality where every fierce contest, every barbed remark, had been a step toward uncovering the raw, undeniable truth of their intertwined destinies. And as the first light of dawn illuminated their troubled faces, it became clear that this battle was not an end, but merely a beginning, a turning point that would set them on a path where the boundaries between love and rivalry, strength and vulnerability, would blur into something as unpredictable and compelling as the wild, uncharted forest itself under the veil of twilight, when the world seemed to hold its breath between reality and dream. Forbidden passion exploded into life, raw, unfiltered, and as dangerous as it was irresistible. In the clandestine corners of the forest, where moonlight and shadow danced together, Cass and Sebastian finally allowed themselves to cross the boundary that had long separated rivalry from desire. It began on a night when the air was thick with anticipation, and the distant call of nocturnal creatures served as a haunting soundtrack. The tension that had simmered for years transformed into an almost palpable energy, a magnetic force drawing them together despite every warning of consequence. In a secluded glade, away from the prying eyes of their respective packs, the two stood facing each other, their expressions a turbulent mix of longing, defiance, and fear. Cass's eyes, usually so fiercely guarded, now glistened with vulnerability. She had always been the one to channel her inner strength into defiance. But tonight, her guard was down, and every touch, every glance from Sebastian seemed to peel away another layer of her carefully constructed armor. His presence was overwhelming, a potent blend of raw power and a wounded tenderness that hinted at the deep scars of his own turbulent past. The storm of their emotions was inescapable, and it left them both teetering on the edge of surrender. Their first hesitant steps toward each other were charged with a palpable electricity. The forest around them fell silent as if to respect the gravity of the moment. Cass could feel her heart pounding like a drum, each beat resonating with both fear and a desperate desire. Sebastian's gaze bore into her with an intensity that promised both salvation and damnation. In that instant, the boundaries of their rivalry shattered. The unspoken desire, long buried beneath layers of contempt and competitive fire, dawned in a blaze of reckless abandon. It began with a near miss, a fleeting brush of hands as they reached for the same fallen branch, their fingers entwining, in a way that sent a jolt through both of them. The simple contact ignited a wildfire of sensations. They moved closer, almost imperceptibly at first, until the space between them was nothing but a breath. The world around them blurred into insignificance, leaving only the overwhelming urgency of their connection. A hushed, almost imperceptible soundscape of rustling leaves and distant, echoing calls filled the void between them. As if in sync with that natural symphony, the pace of their heartbeats quickened, setting a rhythm that was both chaotic and hypnotically tender. The air grew warm as Sebastian's hand cupped the side of Cass's face, his touch both reverent and possessive. His eyes, deep pools of stormy emotion, searched hers for a sign, an invitation to cross that final, irreversible threshold. "Cass," he murmured, his voice a husky blend of desire and caution. It was a single word that carried the weight of years, a plea, a command, and a confession all at once. In that moment, Cass felt the world tilt on its axis. Every doubt and every long-held fear dissolved in the heat of the moment, replaced by an undeniable truth. They were bound by a passion that defied every rule and every law of nature. Their embrace was fierce, almost desperate, as if they were trying to imprint each other's souls with the memory of that connection. Cass clutched at Sebastian, her body trembling with both anticipation and an undercurrent of terror. Every touch was electric, a violent collision of longing and revulsion, of love and the inescapable awareness of the forbidden. There was an inherent violence in their union, not in a physical sense, but in the way that every caress seemed to tear down the barriers built by years of rivalry and restraint. The tension between them was punctuated by moments of tender, almost cinematic intimacy. There were instances when time seemed to slow to a crawl, the soft whisper of Sebastian's breath against her ear, the gentle yet commanding press of his lips on her skin, the unsteady quiver of Cass's lips as she fought to control the overwhelming tide of emotion. In these moments, the world was reduced to a swirl of sensations, each sound, each touch amplified to the point where it could no longer be ignored. Yet for every moment of tenderness, there was a counterpoint of raw, unbridled intensity. The passion between them was not a gentle flame, but a roaring inferno. Their bodies moved with a rhythm that was as primal as it was intricate, a dance choreographed by instinct and the relentless pull of fate. The intimacy they shared was fraught with conflict. Every sigh was a silent rebellion against the confines of their predetermined roles. Every kiss a declaration of defiance against a world that forbade such union. Amid the fevered passion, dark undercurrents of guilt and inner turmoil surged to the surface. Cass's mind was a battlefield, torn between the exhilaration of this forbidden liaison and the crushing weight of consequences that loomed over every stolen moment. Every kiss, every caress was laced with the knowledge that what they were doing was not only taboo, but potentially catastrophic. Yet the danger only heightened the allure. The risk of losing everything only served to intensify the thrill of their connection. In a particularly charged moment, as the rain began to fall softly around them, casting shimmering reflections on their entwined forms, Cass pulled back slightly. The droplets on her skin mingled with tears she hadn't fully realized were falling. "This isn't right," she whispered, her voice trembling between desire and despair. "We're crossing a line that maybe we can't uncross." Sebastian's eyes flashed with a tumult of emotions, regret, longing, and an almost feral determination. "I know," he replied, his tone low and pained. "But in this moment, nothing else matters. We are exactly where we're meant to be. No rules, no boundaries, just us." His words, though laden with the promise of liberation, resonated with the underlying menace of inevitable fallout. It was a promise of pleasure and pain, of joy intertwined with sorrow. Their embrace tightened as if to ward off the creeping doubts. The forest around them seemed to pulse with their collective heartbeat, every rustle and whisper a reminder of the world they were daring to defy. The atmosphere shifted, becoming almost surreal, a cinematic tableau of desire and defiance, of two souls daring to seize a moment that was as fleeting as it was eternal. In that charged interlude, the forbidden nature of their union was laid bare, raw, unedited, and utterly consuming. Every moment was a tightrope walk between ecstasy and despair, with the looming specter of their respective fates casting long shadows over their passionate interlude. The crescendo of their desire built to a climax that promised both transcendence and destruction, leaving them suspended in a moment where the only truth was the undeniable pull of their hearts. As the night deepened and the echoes of their passion lingered in the cool, dewy air, Cass and Sebastian found themselves at the precipice of a new reality. They were no longer merely adversaries locked in endless competition, nor were they simply two souls yearning for connection. They had become the living embodiment of forbidden passion, a fire that burned fiercely in defiance of every law, every expectation, and every warning whispered in the dead of night. In the aftermath, as silence reclaimed the forest and the rain softened to a gentle patter, both were left with the bittersweet taste of ecstasy mingled with regret. Their hearts, still racing with the remnants of desire, bore the mark of a union that was as perilous as it was profound, a union that would forever change the course of their intertwined destinies. And as they reluctantly parted, the unspoken promise of future encounters hung heavily in the air, a promise that each subsequent meeting would delve deeper into the dangerous, forbidden allure of their passion, defying the very fabric of fate itself. In the wake of that torrid, forbidden night, the fragile equilibrium of Cass's world shattered into fragments, each piece reflecting the harsh truth of consequences too long ignored. The first tremors of disruption came not from the wilderness, but from within the very heart of her own family, a family bound by ancient traditions, strict codes of honor, and the unyielding expectations of the pack. The air at home grew heavy, with unspoken accusations and a rising storm of discontent as whispers of Cass's indiscretions and the tumultuous union with Sebastian began to spread like wildfire. One chilly evening, as dusk bled into night and shadows lengthened along the rugged landscape, Cass returned to the pack's headquarters, a sprawling compound carved out in the midst of a dense forest. The moment she crossed the threshold, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Her father, the revered and stern Alpha, was already seated in the dimly lit great hall, his face etched with a blend of disappointment and simmering anger. His eyes, as unyielding as the ancient oaks surrounding their home, bore down upon her as if trying to pierce through the defiant mask she had worn for so long. "Cassandra," he began, in a voice that resonated with both authority and sorrow. "We need to speak." His tone, laced with both reprimand and a hint of sorrow, was enough to silence the murmurs of the assembled pack members. Cass's heart pounded, each beat echoing her mounting dread. The elders and key figures of the pack gathered, forming a semicircle around the central figure of the Alpha, their expressions a mixture of shock and disapproval. Beside her father stood her younger brother, Ronan, a reflection of both the pride and the expectations that had been placed upon Cass from birth. His normally gentle eyes now flashed with a storm of conflicting emotions: anger, betrayal, and a deep-seated concern that cut sharper than any reprimand. "How could you?" Ronan demanded, his voice trembling with barely contained fury. "Risk everything for this forbidden liaison?" His words, though raw and unfiltered, betrayed his own internal conflict. In his heart, the bond of sibling loyalty waged war against the strictures of duty and the unyielding laws of their world. Across the room, other pack members exchanged uneasy glances, the tension palpable as the weight of societal expectations bore down on Cass. The confrontation escalated rapidly. Her father's voice, cold and resolute, filled the hall. "You were raised to be an Alpha, to lead and honor our traditions. Instead, you have sullied our name with reckless passion and defiance." His words, heavy with the burden of leadership and tradition, reverberated in the silence that followed. Each syllable was a reminder of the sacrifices demanded by their heritage, a heritage that now seemed threatened by Cass's impulsive choices. Cass's defiant gaze met her father's, her own eyes reflecting both regret and an unyielding determination. "I did what I believed was right," she retorted, her voice wavering between indignation and heartbreak. "I have always fought against a fate that sought to confine me, and Sebastian, despite everything, is a part of that struggle." Her words, laced with both passion and pain, cut through the charged silence like a blade. It was a declaration that she would no longer let fear dictate her destiny, even if it meant standing alone against the world she once trusted. As the debate unfolded, the conversation turned into a searing exchange of accusations and bitter truths. Her father's voice rose with a measured intensity. "Your actions have consequences, Cass. They have thrown our pack into disarray. Our alliances are jeopardized, and our reputation tarnished. We follow a sacred code, one that you have so carelessly defied." His words painted a picture of a community on the brink, a pack divided by the very decisions that had defined their leader's future. Ronan, unable to contain his inner turmoil any longer, stepped forward. "I trusted you," he said, his voice cracking with raw emotion. "We trusted you to honor our family, to hold our traditions high. Now, every whispered rumor and every pointed finger is a constant reminder of the fracture in our unity." His outburst was met with a chorus of murmurs from the gathered pack members, each voice a small echo of the collective despair and dismay that had taken root. In the midst of this familial onslaught, Cass felt a crushing weight of isolation. Every word, every disappointed stare, felt like an irrevocable betrayal. A betrayal not just of her own dreams, but of the family that had once embraced her unconditionally. The hall, once a place of solidarity and shared purpose, had transformed into a battleground where ancient customs clashed with the unyielding force of personal freedom. Even Sebastian, whose mere presence had always ignited the spark of controversy, was not spared from the fallout. His name was spoken in hushed tones, laced with disdain and disbelief. The pack elders debated fiercely, questioning whether his influence was a corrupting force, a dangerous deviation from the path of tradition that had kept them strong for generations. Though he was physically absent during the confrontation, his shadow loomed large over the proceedings, a symbol of the disruption that had upended the established order. The dialogue grew increasingly heated as the hours stretched on. Voices rose and fell in a turbulent cadence, punctuated by moments of stark silence when the weight of responsibility and sorrow overwhelmed them all. Cass, caught in the crossfire of duty and desire, found herself torn apart by conflicting loyalties. In one searing moment, she pleaded, "I never meant to betray you. I only sought to forge a new destiny, a destiny that embraces both our legacy and the uncharted realms of passion and possibility." Her words, desperate and heartfelt, were met with a cold, unforgiving stare from her father, a gaze that seemed to encapsulate the collective disappointment of a lineage built on honor and sacrifice. As the confrontation drew to a close, the aftermath was a sobering blend of regret and grim determination. The pack was left to pick up the pieces of a fractured unity, while Cass was forced to confront the full magnitude of her actions. In the cold glow of the moonlight filtering through the great hall's high windows, the echoes of the families, disapproval and sorrow lingered like a specter, a constant reminder of the cost of defying fate. In that bitter crucible of familial discord, Cass realized that the path she had chosen was paved with both immense passion and unbearable loss. The recklessness of her desires had not only threatened her own destiny, but had also jeopardized the fragile bonds that held her family together. It was a moment of profound reckoning, a turning point, where the seductive allure of forbidden love collided with the unforgiving demands of heritage and duty. As she retreated into the solitude of her quarters that night, the weight of the confrontation pressed upon her like an anchor. The faces of her family, etched with hurt and disillusionment, haunted her thoughts. In the quiet darkness, the only sound was the soft, relentless ticking of time, a reminder that every choice carved deeper lines into the fabric of her fate. The bitter consequences of passion and defiance were now hers to bear, and the journey ahead would demand not just the courage to pursue love, but the strength to rebuild what had been broken. Thus, the stage was set for a new chapter, a chapter in which Cass would have to navigate the turbulent waters of her own heart while striving to mend the rifts that threatened to tear her family apart. And as the first light of dawn crept through the window, it cast long shadows on a future that was as uncertain as it was inevitable. A future where every step would be a testament to the unyielding power of choice and the haunting price of forbidden passion. Under a sky heavy with the promise of impending change, Cass stood at the crossroads of her destiny, her heart pounding with the weight of a decision that could shatter her very soul. For years, she had waged a silent war against the forces that bound her, a war marked by forbidden passion, bitter rivalry, and the relentless pull of fate. But now, in the stillness before dawn, the cost of that relentless pursuit was laid bare. It was time to choose. Continue down the perilous path of a forbidden love that threatened to destroy everything she held dear, or forge a new future by making a final, irrevocable wish to change the course of her destiny. That fateful morning, as the first pale light crept across the horizon, Cass felt the full force of the inner turmoil that had long simmered beneath her defiant exterior. In the quiet solitude of her room, memories of every betrayal, every tear, and every battle she had fought alongside and against Sebastian swirled in a turbulent mix. There was no escaping the undeniable truth. The path she had chosen was no longer sustainable. The forbidden nature of her love with Sebastian had ignited a fire within her, but that same fire was slowly consuming her, leaving behind a hollow ache of loss and disillusionment. With trembling determination, Cass made her way through the hushed corridors of the Pack's headquarters. Each step echoed with the ghosts of her past decisions, the echo of laughter during wild, moonlit races, the sting of bitter arguments in the rain, and the painful confrontation with her family, whose disapproval had cut her more deeply than any physical wound. Every memory, both sweet and bitter, converged into a singular, unbearable clarity. She could no longer ignore the devastating consequences of a love that defied the very laws of her world. At the edge of the forest, where the ancient trees formed, a silent, unwavering congregation, Cass found herself standing before the unassuming door of the magician's shop. It had been years since she first crossed its threshold, drawn by a desperate hope to rewrite her fate. The shop, cloaked in mystery and steeped in the weight of untold legends, now beckoned her with an almost magnetic insistence. She hesitated for a moment, her heart pounding in her ears, as if echoing the question that had haunted her every waking moment. Was she truly ready to pay the price that would change her forever? Inside, the air was cool and dim, filled with the quiet murmur of ancient incantations and the lingering scent of old parchment. The magician stood behind a worn wooden counter, his face a tapestry of sorrow and solemn wisdom. His eyes, deep and knowing, met hers immediately, as if they already understood the agony and determination swirling within her. "Cassandra," he said, his voice low and resonant, "you've come seeking an end, or perhaps a beginning. Tell me, are you prepared for what must be sacrificed?" The words hung in the air like a heavy shroud. Cass's mind raced with all that she had lost, all that she had risked for a love that was as dangerous as it was irresistible. She recalled the countless nights spent tangled in a battle of emotions, the fierce contests in the forest, the tearful confrontations with her family, and the bittersweet moments of passion with Sebastian. Each memory was a testament to the wild, unyielding forces that had shaped her existence. But now, standing at the precipice of an irreversible decision, all of those moments converged into a single, piercing clarity. The love that had once given, her strength was now unraveling her very being. I need to change it," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the pounding of her heart. "I need to choose a future where I can live without this torment, without the constant battle between who I am and what I'm forced to become." The magician regarded her silently for a long moment, his gaze probing the depths of her soul. He then nodded slowly, as if resigning himself to the inevitability of her fate. "Very well," he said softly. "But know this, every wish has its price. The balance of nature, the fate of those you love, your very self. It will all be measured against the scales of destiny. Are you certain that you wish to pay such a cost?" Cass closed her eyes, letting the weight of his words settle into her bones. In that quiet, fragile space, she felt the crushing enormity of the decision before her. To change her destiny was to risk losing everything, the passion that had defined her, the strength that had driven her, and even the essence of the woman she had fought so fiercely to be, but to continue as she was meant to live in a perpetual cycle of pain and forbidden desire, was an option she could no longer bear. "I'm certain," she replied, her voice trembling with both fear and fierce resolve. "I will pay the price if it means I can finally be whole, to live without the constant torment of a love that is tearing me apart. I want a future where I can embrace who I am, without this curse of relentless passion." The magician extended his hand, a gesture both ancient and sacred. As Cass placed her trembling hand in his, she felt a surge of energy, a cold, electrifying current that seemed to draw her into a vortex of light and shadow. The shop around them began to blur, the details dissolving into a swirl of colors and shapes that defied description. In that moment, she was no longer merely a woman burdened by the consequences of her choices. She was a vessel of destiny, ready to be reshaped by forces far beyond her understanding. As the incantation began, the room filled with a haunting melody, a symphony of sorrow and hope intermingled. Every word uttered by the magician resonated deep within Cass, echoing the ancient promises of change and the irrevocable nature of fate. She felt her very essence being pulled apart, her inner light and darkness laid bare before the relentless tide of magic. Pain, profound and unyielding, seared through her like fire. And yet, in that excruciating moment, she also felt the stirring of something new, a glimmer of possibility, a hope that perhaps, through sacrifice, she could reclaim a part of herself that had long been lost. Time itself seemed to stand still as the transformation took hold. The power of the wish was relentless, demanding a price that would forever alter her form and spirit. In the midst of this harrowing metamorphosis, Cass experienced a whirlwind of emotions, a mingling of agony and liberation, despair and determination. The person she had been for so long was slipping away, replaced by a raw, unfamiliar identity that was both terrifying and strangely liberating. When at last the tumult subsided, Cass opened her eyes to a world that felt both achingly familiar and utterly alien. The cost of her wish was written across every fiber of her being, a reminder of the price of defying fate. In place of the primal, unbridled power that had once surged through her veins, there was now a profound emptiness, a void where the wild, unyielding spirit of her wolf self had been forcibly subdued. In the aftermath, the consequences of her decision weighed heavily on her. The physical change was undeniable. Her eyes no longer glowed with the fierce intensity of a shifter, and a fragile humanity had replaced the wild aura that once defined her. But it was the emotional toll that struck the deepest, a searing loneliness, as if she had been severed from a part of her soul that she could never reclaim. The forbidden passion, the defiant fire that had once driven her, now lay dormant, leaving behind a lingering sorrow that echoed the loss of everything she had ever known. Yet amid the sorrow, there was also a spark, a fragile ember of resolve that promised a future where she could rebuild herself, piece by broken piece. Cass knew that her decision had irrevocably altered her path. The love and rivalry that had defined her relationship with Sebastian would never be the same. They were now irrevocably bound by the consequences of choices made in desperate moments of longing and despair. Standing at the threshold of a new, uncertain dawn, Cass realized that this was not an end, but a beginning, a painful, agonizing beginning that would test her strength and her will to redefine her destiny. The price of her wish was steep, and the scars it left would serve as a constant reminder of the cost of defiance. Yet in that quiet, solitary moment, she also felt a glimmer of hope, a belief that even in the midst of profound loss, there existed the possibility of renewal. In the silence that followed the transformation, as the first light of day bathed the forest in a soft, forgiving glow, Cass embraced the uncertainty of her future. Her journey was far from over, and every step forward would be a testament to her resilience, a pledge to reclaim the parts of herself that had been lost, to forge a new destiny from the ashes of her former life, and to finally understand what it truly meant to be whole. In the weeks that followed the harrowing transformation, Cass found herself drifting through a landscape of both physical and emotional desolation, a barren place where every familiar sound and scent now evoked memories of a life that had been irrevocably altered. The wild, untamed spirit that once defined her, the part of her that ran freely under the moonlit sky, was now a distant echo. Instead, she was left with a fragile human shell that felt both foreign and painfully familiar. Every morning, as the pale light of dawn crept over the horizon, Cass would awaken to a silence that was as heavy as it was unyielding. At first, this silence was a void, a reminder of all that had been lost in the wake of her desperate wish. The fierce glow in her eyes, once a beacon of her inner wolf, had dimmed into a soft, uncertain gleam. In its place was an aching emptiness, a reminder of the forbidden passion and tumultuous battles that had defined her past. Yet, amid the emptiness, a small ember of hope persisted, stubbornly clinging to the possibility of renewal. Slowly, Cass began the arduous journey of recovery. She sought solace in solitude, retreating to a quiet corner of the forest, where the whispers of ancient trees and the gentle murmur of a nearby stream became her only companions. In these moments of isolation, she allowed herself to feel every raw emotion: grief, regret, longing, and a tentative hope for a future unburdened by the past. The physical transformation was only the beginning. The true challenge lay in reconciling the shattered fragments of her identity. She spent hours wandering the forest trails, retracing the steps of her youth, and allowing the natural world to remind her that change was not always a curse, but sometimes a painful precursor to rebirth. During this period of quiet reflection, Cass's inner dialogue became a constant companion. She questioned everything. Was the price of her wish too high? Had she truly gained something by sacrificing a part of herself? Each question brought with it a wave of sorrow, yet also a slow, growing determination to reclaim the pieces of her soul that had been scattered by fate. It was a painful process, a delicate dance between accepting loss and daring to hope. Slowly, she began to see that recovery was not about erasing the past, but about learning to live with its scars while forging a new path forward. As Cass worked to rebuild her inner strength, the dynamic between her and Sebastian began to shift in subtle yet profound ways. Their encounters, once charged solely with fierce rivalry and explosive passion, started to assume a different tone. It was as if the intensity of their former battles had given way to moments of tender understanding, brief interludes where both could acknowledge the pain they had inflicted on themselves and each other. In the quiet corners of the forest and the hushed moments after a skirmish, they exchanged glances that conveyed a myriad of unspoken emotions: regret, longing, and a shared recognition of the sacrifices they had made. One such evening, as dusk settled over the treetops and the sky blushed with the soft hues of twilight, Cass and Sebastian found themselves alone by a tranquil pond. The water, smooth and reflective, mirrored the turmoil and hope swirling within them. For a long while they stood in silence, the only sound the gentle lapping of water against the shore. Finally, Sebastian's voice broke the silence, a low, tentative murmur that seemed almost vulnerable. "Cass, I never intended for things to turn out this way," he admitted, his tone laden with remorse and a quiet, aching regret. Cass regarded him for a moment, her eyes searching his face for any trace of the person she once knew. "Neither did I," she replied softly, her voice trembling between sorrow and a fragile hope. "But here we are, both broken in ways we never imagined, yet still clinging to something that feels real." Her words, tentative as they were, resonated with the truth of their shared journey. It was in that moment that they both understood that their path forward would not be defined by past mistakes, but by the courage to embrace change and to redefine their connection. In the weeks that followed, their relationship evolved slowly. There were days filled with tentative conversations and long, reflective silences, where each word seemed to carry the weight of both apology and promise. They began to spend more time together, not as adversaries locked in an eternal struggle, but as two souls seeking solace in one another. There were moments when, as the forest rustled with the sound of a gentle breeze, Sebastian would reach out and brush a stray lock of hair from Cass's face. In that simple, tender gesture lay a world of unspoken forgiveness and the hope of a future unburdened by relentless conflict. Yet, the journey was not without its setbacks. Old habits and memories of fierce rivalry still surfaced like stubborn shadows. During moments of intense training with their pack, or even during casual encounters, a spark of competition would flare, only to be quickly subdued by the mutual understanding that now defined their bond. These fleeting moments of tension were reminders of the turbulent past. Yet they also underscored how much they had grown, how the fire of passion had transformed from a destructive blaze into a warming glow that illuminated a path toward healing. Cass, now more introspective and resolute than ever, began to embrace her new self. She recognized that the scars she carried were not just marks of loss, but badges of survival. Slowly, she started to find joy in small victories, a laugh shared over a private joke with Sebastian, the simple pleasure of feeling the soft earth beneath her feet during a quiet walk, or the gentle murmur of the wind that whispered secrets of renewal. With each passing day, the emptiness inside her began to fill with a quiet strength, a strength born of pain, introspection, and the courage to start anew. In the midst of this transformation, Cass also sought to mend the fractured ties with her family and her pack. It was not an easy path. Trust once broken is not easily restored. Yet, in the soft light of recovery, there emerged moments of tentative reconciliation. Her family's stern disapproval had given way, albeit slowly, to cautious concern and eventually a begrudging acceptance. The very people who had once castigated her now recognized the toll that relentless defiance had taken on her soul. In hushed conversations and shared glances, there was a silent acknowledgement that the path to redemption was as much about healing oneself as it was about mending broken bonds. By embracing this new chapter, Cass realized that recovery was not a linear journey, but a winding road paved with moments of doubt and bursts of clarity. The painful transformation had stripped her of a part of herself, but it also unveiled a core of resilience that she had never known existed. And as the seasons turned, bringing with them the gentle renewal of life and the promise of a new dawn, Cass found herself stepping forward with a newfound sense of purpose. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, with the soft murmur of the forest as her guide, Cass vowed to redefine her destiny, one step at a time. Her relationship with Sebastian, though still marked by the scars of past conflict, had begun to bloom into something gentler, richer, and filled with the possibility of redemption. Together, they navigated the delicate balance between passion and peace, rivalry, and reconciliation, forging a bond that was as complex as it was transformative. As the soft light of dusk melted into night once again, Cass looked to the future with cautious optimism. The journey ahead was uncertain, laden with both challenges and the promise of healing. Yet, in that quiet, tender moment, she understood that every ending is merely the prelude to a new beginning, a chance to rebuild, to reimagine, and ultimately, to rediscover the indomitable strength that lay within her soul. In the waning glow of a twilight that had witnessed both passion and despair, Cass and Sebastian stood at the precipice of a destiny that had long been written in the stars. Their journey, marked by fierce rivalry, forbidden love, and soul-wrenching sacrifice, had evolved into a tapestry of intertwined fates, each thread a memory of triumph, loss, and the relentless pursuit of something beyond mere mortal understanding. Now, as the echoes of their past battles softened into a reflective silence, the two found themselves facing the final chapter of a saga that was as much about defiance of fate as it was about the acceptance of its inescapable truth. From the very beginning, Cass had been a force of nature, a wild spirit born into a world of supernatural laws and rigid traditions. Her childhood had been a series of daring escapades through moonlit forests, where every race and playful skirmish with Sebastian had served not only as a contest of strength and wit, but as a precursor to the deeper, more complex bond that would eventually tie them together. In those early days, the forest had been their arena, their laughter and rivalry echoing under ancient pines and whispered legends. Yet, beneath the surface of every challenge, there lay the unspoken promise of a connection that transcended the simplicity of youthful competition. As they grew older, their encounters grew more charged and their battles more poignant. The ferocity of their clashes, whether in the heat of the hunt or the quiet intensity of a personal duel, revealed layers of emotion that neither had fully understood at first. With every skirmish, every sharp exchange of words and blows, the flame of forbidden passion was kindled, a flame that burned with both the fury of rivalry and the tender glow of an undeniable, albeit dangerous, affection. In the heat of their conflicts, Cass and Sebastian began to see in each other not merely an adversary, but a mirror reflecting their own deepest vulnerabilities and unfulfilled desires. Yet, the path of defiant passion was fraught with consequences. The turning point came when Cass, burdened by the weight of her choices and the pain of a love that threatened to consume her, made a fateful decision. A decision to seek the magician's aid to alter her destiny. That moment of reckoning, so full of both agony and hope, reshaped her entirely. The transformation was not only physical, but deeply emotional, leaving her to grapple with the loss of a part of herself, even as she clung to the possibility of a new beginning. In the harrowing aftermath, Cass experienced the full measure of what it meant to pay a price for defiance, a price that manifested as loneliness, as the hollow echo of a once fiery spirit now subdued by the relentless force of change. The consequences of her choice reverberated through every facet of her life, shaking the very foundations of her world. The ensuing familial confrontation, laden with disappointment and a fierce clamor for tradition, underscored the extent to which her actions had upended not only her personal destiny, but the delicate balance of the pack. Her family, once her bastion of support, now viewed her as a harbinger of disruption, a symbol of the unpredictable and dangerous allure of forbidden love. In those moments of bitter confrontation, the raw pain of loss was palpable. Every disapproving glance, every hurtful word, served as a reminder that the path to true freedom was paved with sacrifice. Yet amid the chaos of broken bonds and shattered expectations, a quiet metamorphosis took hold. In the solitude that followed her darkest hours, Cass embarked on a painstaking journey of recovery. Through long, introspective walks in the forest, whispered conversations with the silent trees, and the gentle murmur of a stream that seemed to echo the beat of her resilient heart, she began to rediscover herself. The fierce, defiant woman who had once roared through the wild had been tempered by pain. But within that tempered soul still glowed a spark of hope, of renewal, of the possibility that she might someday reclaim the parts of her identity that had been lost. Meanwhile, the tumultuous bond between Cass and Sebastian evolved in tandem with her inner healing. Their fierce battles gave way to moments of tentative understanding, a softening of once unyielding barriers. In shared silences and cautious, unguarded glances, they began to speak a new language, one of regret intermingled with forgiveness, of passion redefined as both an echo of their turbulent past and a promise for a more compassionate future. Even as the scars of their conflicts remained, they found solace in the realization that the pain they had inflicted on each other had also forged an unbreakable connection, a connection that, though complicated and fraught with lingering tension, was rooted in an authentic, if bittersweet, understanding of one another's souls. As time passed, the once jagged edges of their relationship smoothed into an ambiguous truce. Cass learned to accept that her fate, with all its bitter and beautiful complexities, was hers to bear, and that every choice, no matter how painful, carried with it the seeds of growth and the possibility of redemption. Sebastian, for his part, began to acknowledge that his own journey was inseparably linked with hers, a journey of love, loss, and the perpetual struggle between duty and desire. Now, standing at the threshold of a new day, Cass gazed out over a forest that had witnessed her most profound trials and triumphs. The journey from the wild exuberance of her youth to the stark reality of her present had been a long and often excruciating one. And yet, in the soft embrace of dawn, there was a sense of quiet resolution, a gentle acceptance that the tapestry of her life was composed of both radiant joys and searing sorrows. Her story, like all great epics, defied simple categorization. It was a tale of destiny and defiance, of a love that burned fiercely against the night, and of the inevitable cost of following one's heart against the dictates of tradition. As Cass prepared to step forward into an uncertain future, she carried with her the lessons of every moment that had brought her to this point. That love, in all its paradoxes, was both a liberator and a destroyer. That fate, no matter how unyielding, could be met with the courage of a defiant spirit, and that every sacrifice, however painful, carved the path to a destiny uniquely one's own. In this bittersweet finale, the narrative of Cass and Sebastian remains open, a poignant invitation to the listener to ponder the delicate balance between fate and free will, between the seduction of forbidden passion and the hard-won wisdom of sacrifice. Their journey has not ended, but rather transformed into a quiet promise that the echoes of their past will forever resonate in the choices they make and the lives they touch. As the final notes of their saga fade into the soft murmur of the forest, one thing is clear. In the interplay of destiny, love, and sacrifice, every ending is merely the prelude to a new beginning. And so, dear listener, as you carry the memory of this tale with you into the night, may you find yourself questioning and cherishing the delicate balance between choice and destiny. For in the intertwined lives of Cass and Sebastian lies a timeless truth, a truth that invites us all to reflect on the meaning of our own journeys, the cost of our passions, and the inexorable pull of fate that shapes us all. Stay tuned, for every ending opens the door to new beginnings, and every whispered secret of the heart promises another story waiting to be told.